Hello folks, my name is Socrates, also known as Patrick, and this is a time-lapse video of my gameplay for Foldit puzzle 1588. This is an electron density puzzle, and the objective here is to not only fold your protein in the most stable conformation possible, closest to the real thing, but it is also to match the electron density data that is given to you in this big cloud form. And so if you can match the structure with the cloud, you'll get bonus points based on how well your protein overlaps with the electron density data. This is about 6-ish hours worth of gameplay, sped up 32 times to bring it just under 10 minutes for your viewing pleasure, and you get multiple starting structures based on prediction software. I chose starting structure number 5 since it most resembled the electron cloud. And this allowed me to align the protein, orient it with the cloud so that it is similar enough for me to discern where I should tag the ends of the single polypeptide chain, so the N terminus and the C terminus, and kind of just work my way from there and place residues as I see fit. The full process started with me orienting the protein and then just kind of cutting big massive chunks. And then I realized it's probably going to take me a while with just the starting structures and the predicted secondary structure tags. So I decided to take matters in my own hands after a while and just start cutting and placing residues one by one. I started kind of in the middle of the protein, just after like the first red segments. I had the color scheme set to rainbow so I can tell which end of the protein that I was working towards. And so I started kind of like in the greens and then worked my way towards the blues, and then in the second stream I flipped around and did the red and orange portion of the protein. And so that's basically the process that you see here. I would just use the cut tool, and then I would use trace tube for the drawing scheme so that the protein would kind of look uniform and I can kind of see what I was doing. It's a little bit better than cartoon view in my opinion, since you don't have to deal with whatever secondary structure tag is visible. And I didn't feel like retagging everything as loop. I wanted to preserve the original secondary structure predictions as I was working, and then just kind of use those as clues. So I used mostly trace tube for that. Sometimes I would switch back into cartoon mode and helicize a structure and then just kind of try to fit it in. But for the most part, these are all manually placed residues, and then after that, after manually placing all those residues, I put it through score refinement to fix the ideality errors and all the other hand-folding errors that kind of just arise naturally. Along the way, just to make sure that I was kind of doing it right, I would look for landmark residues that would basically indicate that, hey, I'm still kind of aligned with what the prediction should be. And so what I mean by these is that these are residues with very big, very large or recognizable side chains that aren't really ambiguous. So for the most part, these are the aromatic side chains. Those are the phenylalanines, the tryptophans, and the tyrosines. Those have either one or two aromatic rings, and they're very like flat pancakes, kind of sticking out from the side. So they're very easy to spot. Another landmark residue that was useful was proline. Proline is bulky to start with, but also since it's the only amino acid that just kind of double backs on its own nitrogen, it was kind of easy to spot it from the other smaller side chains. And then the other landmark residue that was very useful to me were the big, long hydrophilic side chains, namely lysine and arginine. And so those would extend out way into space off the backbone, and you can discern those very well, even when you had the threshold set to low. Which, by the way, which is also another key thing that helped me handfold this puzzle, was that manipulating the electron density visibility tools kind of helped me orient the backbone and just kind of kept me on track and removed a lot of the noise that you would get with just the straight up electron density cloud turned all the way up. So I would just, increase it and decrease the threshold as needed. I would basically use the smallest threshold possible to, like, have an uninterrupted backbone, but I would use the smallest one possible to kind of see the side chains as thinly as possible, if that makes sense. Basically, I didn't want to have too much ambiguity in it. If I don't know. I'm doing this recording in one take, but if I can use less of the electron cloud, then the electron cloud that I see has to be there. So if the threshold's low, then, and I'm seeing an uninterrupted backbone, then the side chains that were showing up off of those backbone clouds would have to be there, and so finding those landmark residues was made much easier because of that. Let's just say that. So after the entire hand-folding business, which, like I said, which was about 6 hours worth of gameplay, it entered basically recipe refinement. So obviously the hand-folded structure just was, like, abysmally bad. Like, it's hundreds of thousands in the negatives in terms of folded points. And so to get it actually to a leaderboard position, I would have to shake and wiggle and do all that. But the problem is that, when you wiggle from a very low score state, it's just gonna blow up the protein. It's gonna blow. So I used a variety of recipes to aid in this endeavor, namely zero-length bands and quick fix. Those are the two most important recipes for kind of fixing a lot of the ideality errors that just come up with hand-folding all of these residues and placing them manually like this. Those are the ones that I found to be most useful. They still took a long time to churn through as opposed to a normal puzzle, and this is a big puzzle too, especially with 221 residues. And so I found those to be most useful in my endeavor, and just kind of let those churn. I would kind of oversee it as well. The score refinement phase took about like 5 hours, and I still got a pretty decent place on the leaderboard, but I knew I had room to grow, and I was disappointed that I kind of started late. So this could have, I could have had a better score when I folded, but you know what, I'm happy. I think I almost breached 20,000 points. I think my leaderboard score ended up being somewhere in the 19,000s, so I was still pretty happy about it, and that still landed me a pretty decent leaderboard spot. But yeah, so after using those recipes primarily, and once I was back into the positives as far as score, I transitioned into other score refinements to kind of jolt the protein in certain places, and also try to mix up my strategies a little bit. I used a little bit of Acid Tweaker and Random Idealize, as well as TVDL's recipes, namely Deep Rebuild and Remix. And then I also used an older recipe of his where it would basically chop up the protein into like little bits, like, and you can set the step size too, so you could do literally residue by residue. And then just having enable cut bands on and the volatility that comes with that, since it was already pretty stable, it just kind of nestled into all the spots that it needed to be. And so that actually proved a little bit effective too, in terms of stabilizing and finding some score gains once everything was refined, but still in the electron cloud, which helped to keep it together in spite of not having zero-length bands with enable cut bands on, because enabling cut bands sometimes leads to some very wonky physics regarding wiggle. But anyways, that's the main gist of it. I'm clocking in at around 9 minutes now, so that's basically it, I guess. I want to just take a moment to mention that I do live stream this game every Friday at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific time, and that's on twitch.tv/Socrates. That's S0CKRATES. And then I also have a Twitter and a Discord where you can follow me and interact with me at, and those links will be down below. My Twitter handle is at Mr. Socrates. That's MRSO. That's the letter, lowercase letter O, CKRATES. Didn't need to use the zero there. Anyways, my name is Patrick, also known as Socrates. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you on stream.